G'day guys, I'm D-Mac from NBA Fantasy Bible, and along with me as always is Kayla Fonte. And together we're between two hoops. How you going, Kayla?
I'm doing well, enjoying the break. How about you?
Enjoying the break. I actually haven't seen too much of the All-Star weekend.
Mhm.
A few highlights here and there, but I'm really missing fantasy. Are you missing fantasy as much as I am?
I really am. The NBA All-Star activities just don't do it for me.
I'm the same. And I looked at some of the old All-Star footage from back in the day, and I sound like a real old man. Shout out to Dan Besbris, the old man squad, but man, it's just not the same. But
Mhm.
getting back into fantasy, not long until we get back into the actual games. But we've got you covered in terms of fantasy stuff. But today we're looking at some of our targets post All-Star break. Shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it indeed. Headlined by Alex Sarr and Isaiah Collier. Let's look at some of our targets. And I'll preface this, and we've got some big lists here, but we'll break it down individually very shortly. But I'll just preface this by saying these are some targets, firstly, that we're looking to acquire either by trade, and that'll be the first list that we'll go through very shortly, or perhaps they're still available on the waiver wire. So it may be dependent on the type of league that you're in or even the competitiveness of your league. So yeah, just be mindful of that when we go through each and every one of these. Starting with a couple of Utah Jazz, Isaiah Collier and Keontae George. Both have been just must-roster guys in the last month. Collier's entered the starting lineup. He's looked really good, but he does have some fantasy flaws in his game, but I still think he's a must-roster guy.
Yeah, I think so too, especially with the assists that he's providing. I mean, you're not really going to find that off the waiver wire. And we all know about Utah and their silly season shenanigans.
And that's the thing. This is why we're saying that they're a trade target. So it's very, very unlikely that you'll find them on the waiver wire in a standard 12 team or a deeper league, perhaps in a more shallower league. But because of the silly season shenanigans that we are ought to see from Utah, amongst a few other teams, we think that Collier and Keontae George are must roster or even trade worthy guys. So let's go and acquire these guys. These guys are actually probably more suited to a points league situation. What are your thoughts there, Kayla, as a big points league extraordinaire yourself?
Yeah, it really just comes down to the crappy field goal percentage and free throw shooting. At least not for Keontae George as much, but the percentages don't really matter as much in points leagues, which is why they're better suited to those kind of formats. And even the turnovers too. They're very, very turnover prone, especially as young players. So that doesn't really matter as much in points, and especially the assists too. Those are usually weighted a little bit heavier.
Yeah, just look at the numbers over the last 30 days for Isaiah Collier. Look, it's going to hurt your shooting percentages, but it's just high volume. And that's why we're saying as a points league, if you're in a points league, Collier just has to be had. And I think he can improve his efficiency as he gets more experience, as he's playing alongside a Keontae George. There's still going to be Colin Sexton, who's still on the squad. He's still coming back from injury. Jordan Clarkson is also there. So be mindful of that. But again, we think that Utah Jazz will rest a lot of these guys down the stretch, but they're going to play a lot of minutes into these young guys. And it's not just Collier and George, and we'll speak about some of their younger, bigger brigade later on. But these guys are guys that have to be had, and you should go and acquire them via trade as well. Next on the list, obviously, we're massive on Donovan Clingan. DeAndre Ayton is out for several weeks, so that makes Clingan a must-roster guy. It's probably too late to go and get him off the waiver wire. If he is on the waiver wire, go and pick him up right now. But if he is not, I would be looking to trade for him. Perhaps you can convince the new owner that it's just not going to last. Ayton could be coming back soon. Robert Williams may be taking some of his time. But I think Portland are just going to put a lot of minutes into Donovan Clingan.
Oh, 100%. They're going to put a lot of minutes into all of their young guys just because they can afford it. I mean, Portland is basically like a fantasy gold mine in the second half of the season. And it's the same kind of situation with the Utah Jazz, where they can just afford to develop their guys. And like, for example, Scoot Henderson last year was phenomenal in the silly season, but for the rest of the season, wasn't really a rostered guy.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Good segue into the next part. Scoot Henderson's on the list, as well as Denny Avdia and Tamani Kamara. I think they should all be rostered if they are available, and it's highly likely that Scoot's probably available. Kamara could also be available. Unlikely that Avdia is available. 75% rostership sort of indicates that he's rostered in most spots, but I think these guys are going to have tremendous ends to the season. I'm not sure what's going to happen with some of their older brigade, like Jeremy Grant. just because they've been on a bit of a roll. Before All-Star break, they were playing some really good basketball.
Hmm. Honestly, I'm not too worried about it though, just because like they are at the bottom of the rankings. But yeah, they were on a roll. And hopefully this new squad that we see in the second half will be on a roll too for fantasy.
Yeah, just a bit of a deeper dive on Donovan Clingan. Just the last two games, ever since DeAndre Ayton came out and went down injured, huge numbers, massive numbers. That first game where he started 21.2 minutes, not a humongous game, but still a fantasy-friendly game. In that second game where he started after Ayton's injury, 31 minutes, putting up 17 points, 20 rebounds, and 3 blocks. That's easy top 50 category league stuff. And quite frankly, easy top 50 points league stuff. So I think he's suited to all league formats.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. And even if you look at the category here too, like blocks, there's only been 2 games over the stretch where he didn't have any blocks. Like he's at least giving you 1 or 2 per game, and sometimes going off for 3 or 4.
And even before the long-term injury to Ayton, when Clingan did start, he put up tremendous value. We spoke about this at the trade deadline show. We spoke about him as a stash for trade deadline. He's now come into a really nice situation, not because of a trade that we thought could happen with Ayton, but more because of the injury. And it's unfortunate for those that do have Ayton in their squad, but fantastic for those that either A, stashed Clingan, or B, picked him up as soon as we heard about the Ayton news as well. So go and acquire him, go and trade for him, because I think that he's going to have an easy top 50 end to the season. If Ayton does come back, again, I think they'll be in that situation that you prefaced. I think they'll be on the losing side, so they're going to be pumping minutes into their young star.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think someone like Robert Williams is going to be taking a lot of those minutes away from Clingan? Is that a risk?
I think it is a risk, but it's also something that I'm not too worried about. I just see them wanting to prioritize Clingan over Williams. So even if there is a little bit of that minute split there, I think it's still Clingan who's going to be coming out on top.
Yeah, I agree there. Okay, next on the list, Jose Alvarado. We spoke about him as someone that we thought would be a beneficiary of DeJounte Murray's injury and the unfortunate injury. He'll be out very, very long term. But as soon as that happened, the next game, Jose Alvarado didn't start, didn't play well, didn't play big minutes. Carlo Makovic has been picked up in a lot of spots, but I still prefer Jose Alvarado. I think even just based on his last couple of games, he's a must roster guy.
Yeah, I do too. I know a lot of people did drop him after that rough game. But I mean, if you think about it, he's going to have rest of season value just because the Pelicans are the worst team in the West. They're not really playing for anything. It's too late at this point. They have so many injuries. I mean, it really just opens the pathway for Alvarado.
Absolutely. And getting those elite assists, elite steals, we know he's an absolute thief when it comes to that situation. Yeah, you got to go and acquire him or pick him up. He could still be available on your waiver wire. Perhaps now over All-Star break, people have caught on that he has to be had. If he is, for whatever reason, again, still available, go and pick him up. But I would also be looking to trade for him as well. Not sure what you'll be able to, well, how you'd acquire him, but he's someone that I'm targeting.
Yeah, same here.
Now, next one on the list, Alex Sarr. This is a real easy one. I think we've talked about him pretty much the entire season,
Yep.
but Jonas Valanciunas is no longer there.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, there's not really going to be anyone competing with him at center for minutes. And the Wizards aren't playing anything for anything. They have that opportunity to just develop the young guys. And there's going to be a lot of other Wizards on this list as well.
There will be. We'll speak about them very shortly, but I think Alex Sarr, he's not going to lose a lot of time to Rashawn Holmes. So Alex Sarr, the world is his oyster at this stage. And I was probably outlandish earlier in the season when I said he could finish the season with a nice stretch of being a top 50 guy. Maybe that's not that outlandish now. In a category league situation where he's putting up nice blocks, decent rebounds, his shooting percentages are going to hurt a little bit. But if you can have a nice buffer with some other efficient guys, I think he's going to be worth definitely trading for down the stretch.
Yeah. I've actually been trying to acquire him in some of my leagues, but a lot of people know of his value for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm doing the same situation there as well. Ayo Dosunmu, we spoke about him. Obviously, they've cleared out the pathway a little bit for him. Zach LaVine is now no longer with the Bulls. I think Dosunmu is going to have a fantastic end of season.
Yeah, I think so too. And he was one of our stashes, and he just has that opportunity to ball out.
Yeah, a number of the names on this list are some of our stashes, so it's worked out quite nicely. And not all of them were because of trades, like we saw with Donovan Klingen, but it still worked out quite nicely. But AO was definitely one of the guys that have benefited from the trade deadline. Next one, Max Christie. Now, we all heard about the Luka Doncic AD trade, but Christie has really been a beneficiary since his trade.
Yeah, and it's honestly something that I didn't really expect either. But I mean, I'm so happy that he's proving me wrong. He's been absolutely fantastic. The Mavs are really shorthanded, so it's opened up
Mhm.
some extra minutes for him. And yeah, he's just been phenomenal. And I am trying to get him everywhere I can.
And they're short-handed, and it's going to be short-handed for quite some time.
Yeah.
Obviously, AD and Gafford are not playing the same role or same position, but it's that usage, the extra shots. Obviously, AD puts up a lot of shots. So Max Christie is benefiting and benefiting in a big way. So if he is available, 42% rostered indicates that he may be available in your league. Go and grab him. If not, I think you could probably trade for him with your worst player. Why not? Let's go and acquire him. Next one, Bol. He's quite a divisive figure. I've never been that big on him, and I can see the upside. I can see the appeal, but I think right now, just the last few games, probably proven me wrong. But those last 4 games that I've highlighted there, just showing the upside in his fantasy game. Much better fantasy player than he is a real life player. But maybe the Suns just run with him down the stretch.
Yeah, I'm in the same kind of boat as you where like I've never been a huge fan of his game, but I mean, after this really solid stretch, I mean, he's kind of been proving us wrong. And of course, Bradley Beal has missed some time as well, so that's to factor in. But I mean, look at the blocks; those have been phenomenal. The rebounds, I mean, he's pretty friggin' tall, so that helps out a lot. But it's definitely a situation to monitor down the stretch if they continue to give him that runtime.
Yeah, and heavily rusted in the last few days for good reason. I think you just have to take that flyer on him. It may not work out at all, and history tells us it probably won't. But like I said, if the Suns just want to go in that direction, try something different, see if they can push for that playoff berth, then maybe they just keep playing him even when Bill does return. I was skeptical because Kevin Durant had missed a few games, and that meant that Bol was playing more time. And I thought, okay, Durant's coming back, less time for Bol. We'll just put him to one side. And he played a ton of minutes even when Durant was back. So, proven me wrong. So I'll admit to that. So let's see where it takes us. But again, I will not be surprised if we end up saying he's a drop. But for now, he has to be had on a roster in a standard league. Next guy, Quentin Grimes, another guy that was traded at the deadline, but boy, he has looked tremendous.
Yeah, and I didn't think he was going to really have much fantasy value with the Sixers, but I was proven wrong again, and he's actually been really solid. Like that 30-point outing, fantastic. And the minutes have been really good too.
The minutes have been really good. The last game was played without PG, so keep that in mind. So that 30-point game, don't be getting used to that type of output all the time. But I still think he's worthy of a standard league roster um, spot. So look at those numbers since the trade from Dallas to the 76ers. He's been fantastic. He's a must roster guy right now, and he probably is still available in your league. 20% rostership indicates such. Next guy, Brandon Pajemski. Now, this one's a funny one. We've been burnt by him throughout the season. Some of us were quite big on him in the preseason. Some of us weren't as big on him on the preseason, but now he's just playing really good basketball. He was coming off the bench, putting up some good numbers, and we'll show those last 10 games very shortly. There's the last 10 games with a highlight around the last few where he's come into the starting lineup. Steve Kerr likes what he's doing. His role seems to be pretty secure. I know Jonathan Kuminga still needs to come back into that squad. Do you see this continuing?
I think it will. I just think he's going to experience some hiccups along the way. So I don't expect it on a super consistent basis. But I think what we're seeing right now is very promising.
Would you be adding in a standard league?
I would. Yeah. I mean, I was really big on him coming into the season. And I mean, he kind of disappointed in the first half, but I think now he's turning things around.
Yeah, and look, he's still a young player as well, so there's a bit to that as well. But yeah, I think he is a must roster right now. Next one's Jackson Hayes. probably more suited to a category league situation.
Mhm.
He did get injured in the last game, so a lot of people were dropping him. It was a face contusion. So just be mindful that I think he's still going to be the starting center. I don't think Alex Len is above him right now.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I mean, the Lakers don't really have any other centers that they can kind of turn to. And yeah, Hayes isn't the best fantasy option, but I mean, as long as he's getting those minutes and having that opportunity, I mean, he's giving you some blocks, couple of steals, solid field goal percentage as well, couple points, rebounds. I think it's just worth to add him.
Yeah, he's not for everyone. I think it does depend on your situation, particularly in a category league. In a points league, I probably would look elsewhere in a standard
Yeah.
12-team points league. But for categories, if you need those blocks, you need those decent rebounds and field goal percentage, fantastic pickup there. And like I said, I would expect that he still remains as the starter moving forward once he does return.
Mhm.
Next one, Karis LeVert. Since the trade from the Cleveland Cavaliers to the Atlanta Hawks, he's looked really good.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't really expected that, but I mean, he's been proving me wrong, and he's a very versatile player, which really helps in category leagues as well. He can give you the offensive and defensive stats, so pick him up.
Pick him up. Yeah, traditionally over time, we know that he can hurt your percentages in a category league
Mhm.
situation. So less hurtful in a points league situation there. So I think he's still with that solid role that we're finding at the Hawks. I think he's worthy of a roster spot right now in a 12-teamer. And finally, on this first part of the list is Ben Simmons, number one picked up player in the last few days. And for good reason. I think people are excited by the line in the last game. So just look at the last
Mhm.
game. Since he was acquired by the Clippers, it wasn't in a trade, it was in a buyout. But against the Utah Jazz, keep in mind that Kawhi Leonard didn't play this game. So more opportunity for Ben Simmons. And of course, we know what he can do. I don't think he'll ever get back to his all-star best. But alongside a Harden and hopefully also alongside a Kawhi Leonard, can he keep this up?
Honestly, I don't know if he can keep it up. I think it's something that's very, very hard to predict with Simmons. I'm definitely monitoring them though. So I picked him up in a couple of leagues, especially points leagues, and I'm just going to keep monitoring him down the stretch. I mean, this could be maybe a better fit for him, and in turn, he could provide better numbers. But I mean, that first game was very promising, even with Kawhi out.
Even with Kawhi out, don't forget that he can play small ball center as well behind Zubac. So keep that in mind. He's a versatile player. And you say he's a good pickup in points league. I think he's actually a really good pickup in category leagues. He's not going to hurt you in
Mhm.
free throws like he has traditionally. 4 from 4 is unbelievable from Ben Simmons. So maybe he's
Mhm.
turned a corner in that respect. He's never going to be a 80+% sort of free throw shooter, but he's most of the time it's on low volume as well. It's no longer Hacker Ben at this stage. Maybe it does go to that situation later on, but that's usually in playoff situations. So it won't hurt you in fantasy. Look at that all-round game in the last game. So it is very juicy, very enticing. So I can see the appeal. I picked him up in one league, and I just want to see how it plays out once the team is fully healthy, once they're all back on board and Kawhi's there and they're all running the show. So I would be picking him up and just see where it goes at this stage.
Mhm.
Now, they're the guys that I'm super, super interested in. The next list are guys that I think are borderline, but also really, really, really enticing. And it's something to really monitor, or it depends on your situation. So, uh, first, we're starting with Dayron Sharp. Now, we spoke about him with trade deadline period. We were hoping for Dayron Sharp's benefit that Nick Claxton would be traded. Not to be, but it's now silly season. The Nets suck. Do you think Claxton's going to play big minutes? And if not, is Dayron Sharp going to be the beneficiary?
Yeah, I do not think that Claxton will be playing big minutes down the stretch. I think Sharp is going to be one of the main beneficiaries, especially Clowney as well. Clowney hasn't really looked as good as we wanted him to this year, even when he's had those opportunities. Um, but yeah, those are two guys that I'd really be monitoring.
Yeah, we know that Dayron Sharp just puts up massive, massive rebound numbers. So if you're short on rebounds, 5% rostership makes it appear like that he can be obtained everywhere. So go and pick him up if you definitely need those rebounds. But yeah, I'm excited by the end of season for him. He's probably borderline anyway as it stands in his limited minutes. He's playing some fantastic basketball off the bench. The next three, Washington Wizards, young brigade, up and down, pretty inconsistent. And we've seen some flaws in Bilal's game, but I just think the upside is still there.
I think so too. I know a lot of managers have been frustrated with him, especially when he had that really hot start to the season. But I mean, as we've talked about, like the Wizards, they're not competing for anything. They can afford to develop their young guys. They're going to give them a lot of minutes. And that's when we're going to see a lot of good fantasy value from these three guys in Star.
Yeah, Keyshawn George is very efficient. Bub Carrington, I think, just decent percentages. The assist upside is there as well. I don't know if Malcolm Brogdon is going to play much down the stretch. I'm not sure about Smart, Middleton. We've got some nice leadership and mentorship there, but I think they're just going to really push a lot of minutes into their young brigade. We mentioned Alex Sarr earlier. I think the sky's the limit for this really young core moving forward. Next one on the list, Robert Williams. We did talk about him earlier. I think there's a role there. And if he can play close to 20 minutes, which that's not far-fetched in behind Donovan Clingan there, I think there's a fantastic opportunity in a category league situation.
Yeah, and I think it's really likely that he'll get about 20 minutes per game just because Aiden's out. And I don't know if he's going to even return for the rest of the season. I think it's a possibility that he's just done. But even if he does return, it's going to be, I think, in a very, very limited role.
Yeah, so I'm keeping an eye out for Robert Williams for sure, just based on that. Matas Buzelis was a very popular pickup in the week leading up, or a couple of weeks leading up to All-Star break. Had a bit of a quiet couple of games just before the All-Star break. We saw his limitations in his fantasy game. Do you see that as a problem? And is that someone that you're holding or going to rush out and picking up right now?
It's not something that I'm really seeing as a problem just because, I mean, he is a rookie. There's going to be those kind of issues, especially with consistency. He's someone who I'm willing to take a chance on just because of that fantasy potential. Yeah, how about you?
Yeah, look, I'll be honest. I dropped him for Ben Simmons, and it may cost me a fair bit, but I thought, look, I saw the limitations. They're not giving him the keys just yet that we'd like. Kobe White's still there, obviously. Lonzo Ball's been out the last few games as well. So there's still mouths to feed. And Matas Buzelis, if the shot's not going in at a great clip like it was in the lead up to All-Star break, there's a few limitations in his game. So, yeah, he's borderline for me, and he's probably someone I would like to go and pick up very quickly if he does have a bit of a nice stretch moving forward. So, yeah, borderline, let's monitor. But also, I have no issue with holding him right now. Next one's Asar Thompson. We know he struggles at the free throw line, but apart from that, massive upside, 65% rostered indicates that people believe in him. I don't know if they're getting confused with Amen Thompson either, but they're not that dissimilar. The only main difference is the opportunity and the minutes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Jaden Ivey's, I think he's done for the season. So that does help him a little bit. I've been holding him for the whole year. I know a lot of people dropped him after he returned from his blood clotting issue just because of, lack of production and things like that. But I don't know, he's a player who I personally really like. So I'm holding on to him. And yeah.
Yeah, I think the athleticism alone is almost roster worthy. I know you don't get points for athleticism, but boy, it's fun to watch.
It
Carlo
is.
Makovic, we spoke about Carlo earlier when we spoke about Jose Alvarado. He's putting up some decent numbers. Yves Missi missed the last game. We'll see what happens with his status moving forward, but do you think Carlo Matkovic is a must roster guy?
I'm not completely sold on him at the moment, but I think he will get those opportunities down the stretch. I'm a little bit worried about the additions from the Raptors, like Kelly Olynyk, for example. I don't think he's going to have significant role, but he's still going to take maybe a couple of minutes away from Carlo. But definitely a situation to watch out for.
Yeah, and I guess if Zion's playing down the stretch, which I doubt will happen, but if he plays a lot of games, someone like Kelly Olynyk is actually a really nice floor spacer around Zion Williamson. So we'll see how that plays out. Maybe Olynyk is someone that we should also be monitoring down the stretch. Not on our list at the moment, but who knows? We know that he's a bit of a fantasy darling as well. Moussa Diabate. We know that the Mark Williams trade was rescinded. Mark Williams has gone back to the Hornets. Do you think that Mark Williams is going to be playing?
I don't know. I think he returned to the team at some point. I mean, after a situation like that, I could totally understand how it's hard to go back to your former team, especially with like the whole situation with Delta Connect and the Lakers too. Yeah, I think he'll return at some point. I just don't see him having like a significant role down the stretch. I mean, there's really no point, and this is going to be the same issue with Lamelo Ball, which is also why we put Nick Smith there.
Nick Smith is
But
there, yeah.
yeah, these are two guys who I'm really, really watching out for. I mean, silly season shenanigans.
Yeah, it's an intriguing situation with Mark Williams. He's not injured, but also the trade was rescinded because of issues with his health. So it's a funny situation. Haven't heard a great deal in the news about that.
Mhm.
Not sure if he's going to play straight after the All-Star break, but yeah, it's something to be mindful of. You spoke about Nick Smith. So LaMelo Ball, similar situation about the tanking Charlotte Hornets. We'll see if LaMelo does play a fair bit down the stretch, but I think Nick Smith is someone to monitor, and if not, just preemptively roster him.
Mhm.
He did have a very disappointing game in the last game, but he did get ejected early. I think he was having a go at KCP and vice versa. So yeah, just be mindful of that when you do look through the numbers. Kessler Edwards, last man standing. No AD, no Daniel Gafford. Kessler Edwards is starting, putting up decent numbers.
Yeah, this one really just comes down to the amount of injuries that the Mavericks have at the center position right now. Even Derek Lively, I know he's set to be reevaluated in a couple of weeks, but I mean that doesn't mean he's going to return right away. I think he's still got some time to go.
Yeah, let's monitor Kessler Edwards there. George Yang, another situation in Atlanta with the trade. Solid without being spectacular. I think he's got a pretty nice role, but he's sort of a borderline. He's not a must roster guy, but if you have him,
Mhm.
it's fine, but more streamer level for me. But just keep an eye on that with the Hawks. And finally, we're going to go through a few Brooklyn guys later on, but Keon Johnson, he's sort of been that borderline guy. But if someone like Cam Johnson doesn't play down the stretch, don't know what's happening with Cam Thomas as well. He still hasn't returned. It'll be real fun to see how those shenanigans play out. And there could be a silly season winner again at the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, because
And
Johnson's actually been
finally,
pretty solid.
he's been solid,
Yeah.
solid without being spectacular. So more
Yeah.
that borderline guy. And we'll go through a couple more Nets shortly. But just monitor the situation with Jalen Smith. We know, again,
Mhm.
he was our darling going into the trade deadline. The Vucevic trade never happened. But Jalen Smith, we just know that he's a per minute monster. He's just putting up really nice numbers, probably more suited to a 14 or 16 teamer right now if you needed to roster him. But just keep an eye out if Vucevic misses some games down the stretch. We don't know what's going to happen with Chicago. Are they just going to keep playing Vucevic because they're so intent on being mediocre and just trying to get the play-in berth? Who knows what happens? But just keep an eye out for Jalen Smith in regards to Nikola Vucevic. I think Kyle
Yeah.
Filipowski is going to have a really nice end to the season just because we
Mhm.
know Utah and Larry Markkinen, John Collins, you name it, Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson. I think Kyle Filipowski is going to have a really nice run.
Oh yeah, it's basically all of the main guys on the Jazz that you have to worry about. But then again, they're a gold mine here. Like there's so
Mm.
many options that you could pick up. So even if you mix out on the main guys that we talked about earlier, these are two options right here who you can find readily available on the waiver
Yep.
wire.
And they are readily available. Filipowski and Sensabar. I'm also really concerned about Walker Kessler. I've got him because
Yeah.
we're massive on Walker Kessler in the preseason, and it's worked out really well. He's had a fantastic season, but now it's the shenanigans of the Utah Jazz. He's already missed a few games. He's such a young player, yet they're calling it rest. So we just know what Utah Jazz are doing. So I expect to see the same. So Filipowski is going to have a fantastic opportunity in his rookie season. So that's going to be really nice for those that held on in deeper leagues. The aforementioned Noah Clowney, he's pictured there. We just know of the upside with this guy, but it happened at the end of last season. He just put up a couple of humongous games, particularly with blocks. We haven't really seen that from him this season, but again, Nets shenanigans, guys like Clowney, guys like Watford, who is also listed there. Clowney's still out injured. Not sure when he's coming back, but just keep an eye out for these Brooklyn Nets because things could change very, very quickly. And a lot of guys could end up being on the outs list and a lot of beneficiaries like Clowney, like Watford. So keep an eye out for those guys.
Oh yeah. I mean, Clowney has really underwhelmed this season, especially after what he did in last year's silly season. But I mean, he's going to have that chance again once he returns from injury. So he's definitely a guy you got to monitor.
Yeah, he's really turned into just a volume shooter as opposed to a rim protector that we saw at the end of last season. I know they've still got Dayron Sharp, so I guess the role's not quite the same. But just keep an eye out for those guys. Jamal Sheed, again, this is a strange one, but he's the backup to Emmanuel Quickly, and we love Emmanuel Quickly. We were massive on him coming into this season. Hasn't worked out well at all. That's just attributed to constant injury after injury. But if the Toronto Raptors decide to just really play it easy with Emmanuel Quickly, Jamal Sheed's the next guy in line.
Yeah, and I think they are going to be very careful with Quickly because it just doesn't really make sense to risk that when you're not even in playoff contention and you're going for a tank. So yeah, Jamal is going to be the next guy up.
Yep, Emmanuel slowly is. Jonathan Mobo, hasn't been as exciting as I was wanting him to be, but he's had the opportunity with Jakob Poeltl out. I still think with a few guys, and like we said with Emmanuel Quickly, perhaps guys like Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett has missed a few games. He could, down the stretch, miss a few more. Mobo, Dick, these types of guys could just be some silly season winners.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of bench guys who stand to benefit for the rest of the season, just because, like we've said before, like the Raptors aren't playing for anything. They're going to want to be careful with their guys, especially the very injury-prone ones. So it's going to be the bench guys that they look to.
And speaking of bench guys, the last guy on that list is Jordan Hawkins. Same situation. There's a common theme here. Utah, Brooklyn, New Orleans, Toronto. They're all struggling teams. So it's all silly season shenanigans. Jordan Hawkins, really dependent on whether or not guys like Zion Williamson plays. And God forbid, Trey Murphy. Fantastic season. We love him in fantasy. Top 20 guy over the last probably month, 2 months. He's been fantastic, but do they just really look after these guys down the stretch and play more of Jordan Hawkins, more of Jose Alvarado, Carlo Matkovic?
I think so. I mean, why not? They have like literally nothing to lose from doing that, and you just develop some guys. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes sense. So just monitor Jordan Hawkins right now, and a nice deep league ad as well. All right, Kayla, that's a wrap. They're our post All-Star break target guys. Again, just to reiterate, a lot of those are via trade at the start of the episode or perhaps on the waiver wire come the end of the episode. But let us know what you're doing. Kayla, what's going on at the moment? BBB.
Yeah, BBB, we'll probably record tomorrow or sometime next week, so stay tuned for that. Yuri and I also joined our first WNBA Fantasy League, thanks to the Menace Podmen. So we're very excited for that. Yeah.
Oh, that does sound exciting. Looking forward to listening to the next episode of BBB. I know the last few have been fantastic. The last one was a round table. So there were 6 of you. I watched that. Very, very interesting. So go and check those out at BBB. You and the gang are doing fantastic work there. Yuri and yourself particularly. But yeah, I really like that round table format. I think we're due another one as well.
It's great to get like different perspectives.
Absolutely. Now, you know where to find Kayla on X and Twitter at Kayla_Fonte. You can also find myself at NBA Fantasy Bible. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us wherever you get your fantasy basketball content. But until next time, Kayla, thank you guys.
Thank you.
See ya.